Hello there and welcome. I am Chef Tom. Happy to have you here in my kitchen with me. I got a little experiment going on tonight. I'm gonna try my hand at mushroom soup, creamy style mushroom soup. And so you're gonna witness a live experiment. Um, Remember that when it comes to cooking for yourself, it's something that you are worthy of and deserve, and it's the best thing you can do to care for yourself is to feed your body good nourishing food. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Mushrooms are awesome for the immune system, which we can all do to build up this time of year especially, and with what's going on in the world. So I'm going to turn the camera down to the cutting board. I've already got a few mushrooms cut up. These are crimini mushrooms. You're probably all familiar with those. And I had some on hand, so that was the inspiration for this soup. Let the kitchen be your laboratory, your studio, a source of inspiration and creativity for yourself. So I'm going to turn the heat on here. The other things I've got on hand that this here is some chicken broth that I made. I cooked the whole chicken because I made enchiladas. That's a whole other video. But use the bones to make some broth, and that's what that is in that jar. And I wish it was bootleg moonshine, but it's got a little fat on the top, so I'm going to scoop some of that off and just set it aside because I'm not going to toss it. I might want to use it. Might be some good fat to add to my soup if I decide it needs that. But there's that, and I'm letting the pan get hot. We're going to throw some butter in there. A basic roux recipe is a tablespoon of butter and a tablespoon of flour and a cup of milk. You can vary those amounts to get thinner or thicker roux. But right now, I'm going to start with the basic 1:1:1 ratio, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, and a cup of milk. Maybe less milk because I don't even have that much. But the point is, before I make the roux, actually, I'm going to cook the mushrooms. And then I'm going to stir the flour and butter into this mushroom saute and proceed from there. Again, I'm improvising as I go, and you're seeing live experimentation and creativity right here on YouTube. Okay, so let's get those going. Then mushrooms, just going to cook those a little bit. And what else have I got? Got me some cauliflower that I steamed off. Got a couple more mushrooms. I'm going to just go ahead and throw them all in there because I'm not sure what else I would do with them, except maybe toss them into a salad, have them fresh that way, or could save some to saute to put into an omelet or with some eggs. That'd be another use for some mushrooms. But tonight, I'm just going to cook them all up and make a big batch of mushroom soup right here in the pan. While that's going, I'm going to pause the video for just a few seconds. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back, and I just had another brainstorm. Got me some yellow onion that I found in the fridge. So I'm going to add some of this to the mushrooms. Give our soup a little onion flavor. Just get rid of all the unfriendly parts of this onion. Chop it up. And you guys get in the hot tub there. Maybe another little bit of butter. Just a teeny little bit. Help these mushrooms catch up, or the onions catch up to the mushrooms, which are starting to get tender. And the onion Just want to get the edge off it. If it doesn't get to cook that much, that's okay. It's an experiment after all. And your cooking doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to follow any rules. And it just has to give you satisfaction. It's really what it comes down to. Like I like to say, if you start with food you like, put your heart into it, the results will stir your soul every time. So here we are. I think these onions are getting there. And now it's time for the roux. So that means another little bit of butter. And so by the time I'm said and done, you're like, oh, he keeps adding butter. I might have used maybe 3 tablespoons altogether. And this is a pot of soup. And if we get 4 servings out of that, that's 3/4 of a tablespoon. Not even. I'm doing my math wrong. It's less than a tablespoon per serving. Okay, so there's some butter. I'm going to lower the heat for the roux phase here. Sprinkle some flour in there. And to avoid clumps, I'm sprinkling it into the butter. Let's see here. You can see what's going on there. It's just pretty much stirring the flour into the butter. And letting it cook just a moment, avoiding any clump formation. And now I'm going to stir the whole mess together, and I'm going to add a little milk. And let this get thick and bubbly. That's not nearly a cup of milk, so let me add a little more. About a half cup. That's what we got going on. And I'm doing this just to create a little creamy foundation. I really don't want this soup to be too heavy. What I'm going to look for here is that milk to start to bubble. It came out of the fridge, so it was cold. It's going to take a moment for the heat to get into it. And once it does that, I'll start adding some chicken broth and some of that cauliflower. In the meantime, what do we got in the spice cabinet? How about a little white pepper? Try a few shakes of that. It's about the end of the jar there. It's got to get refilled. Leave that out. And you can see the bubbling is starting to happen. You can see the thickening is starting to happen. So that looks pretty dang nice right there. Let's get some of our chicken broth in there. I got some of the bone broth and a little bit of packaged chicken broth that I used for, I don't even remember what. Oh yeah, I made risotto the other night. You might know that I'm the mobile chef, which means I go and I cook for tourists here in our resort land in the mountains. And so yeah, I showed a group of girls how to cook risotto. And that's what that chicken broth is left over from. So we're just going to get this all going. And once that gets up to speed, a little more liquid, because this is totally an experiment on the consistency. You can see that I'm just sort of winging it as I go along, and I will confess that that's somewhat of my experience, but I'll also confess that I don't really make creamy soups that often, very rarely as a matter of fact. So you're watching me learn just the way you would learn. Trial and error, experimentation. So, what else? I think, yeah, it's starting to get warm. And the cauliflower is also an experimentation. I'm going to chop this cauliflower up a little bit, just so that it heats up quicker. what I'm looking for this cauliflower to do is two things. One, add a little bit of flavor, and two, a little bit of texture. And we're going to get to a pretty exciting part of this process here in a minute. It's going to involve power tools. And because this pan is not very deep, that's what could make it get exciting. All right, just get the little heat. I'm going to pause the video for a sec while this comes up to heat, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I promise I haven't done anything but just let this heat get into the pan. So I'm going to add a little salt, a little black pepper, stir all this together. And because the broccoli was pre-steamed, it should be tender enough. And now for the exciting part. Here we go. Power tools, come on out here. This here is a stick blender. And so what I'm going to do is first turn down the heat and try to do this without splattering it all over the kitchen. What I'm going to do is park that for 1 second. There we go. Let's try this. Put my splash shield up. The trouble I'm having is that this liquid isn't quite deep enough for an immersion blender to be immersed. So I'm going to tip the pan. I could have used a deeper pan. That would have probably been a good idea. So again, learning from trial and error. Next time around, I'll use a different pan. Something a little deeper. I could transfer this soup to a deeper pan. And depending on how smooth and creamy you really want to make this, if I really wanted to puree the heck out of it and get rid of all the bits and pieces, probably would do that, but I'm about happy with where this is going right now. I don't mind some texture to my soup. So I think I'm going to just leave it at that and have to wipe down the walls and myself. And there we go. It's not super thick creamy, but it's creamy. And I'm going to taste it. Spoon. Yummy. Got a nice mushroom flavor, the cauliflower, adding some texture and some other flavor. I'll open up the cabinet here. Truffle salt, little bonus mushroom flavor. Now, if I really said, oh, I want to thicken this soup up, I would probably just stir in a little more flour. But I think I'm pretty happy with it. I'm going to let it cook. And, you know, Chef Tom says, always use a condiment. And in this case, we may not have a condiment per se, but we'll have some toppings. So let's take a look at what we got. Happen to have some bacon bits. Sprinkle those on there. And I happen to have some green onion. So we'll finish our soup with a little green onion and some bacon bits. And that'll be our cream of mushroom soup. I know that this video is probably approaching the 15-minute mark, which is longer attention span than a lot of people can handle. So what I'm going to do is turn the camera off for another second or two, and I'll be back once it's all plated up to show you how fabulous this is going to look and how delicious it's going to taste. It's nice, simple, wholesome food. You don't need a lot of bells and whistles. If you start with food you love, put your heart into it, the results will stir your soul every time. Okay, we get some bubbling action going on there. And let's see. How about just a little teeny sprinkle of nutmeg, just for fun. Just because it's an experiment. See what that does. Okay. I'll be back when it's plated up. Back here in the laboratory, and voila, a condiment. I found one. Condiment is just like any kind of flavoring agent, right? We think of ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise as your basic condiments, but they might include, this hasn't been used in a little while. I'm having trouble getting into it. I got another tool here somewhere. Yep, this one. Let's see if that's even going to get me. Yeah, we're getting there. All right. Fight my way in there. It's been properly aged. So this is starting to bubble and boil a little bit, which is great. It's going to continue to thicken as I cook it, but I'm going to add a little, just a splash. As Julia Child said, I cook with wine often. Sometimes some of it even gets in the food. You can tell that I don't use that sherry very often. It was welded itself shut. But there we go. It is now time to turn off the heat and plate up our soup. We're gonna have a nice bowl there. And a little sprinkle of bacon. Get into this. Sprinkle of green onion, a little more bacon, a little more green onion. There's our experiment. You watched it live, uncut, unfiltered. Thanks for joining me here in the kitchen. It's been a pleasure having you. Cook for yourself. It's the best thing you can do. Bye.